a lot of new news to talk about. I'm not going to waste any time, just going to get right into it. As we currently speak, essentially throughout all of Trudeau's run as Prime Minister, he has been time and time again asked by world leaders to step up in the amount they are spending. Total amount right now we have spent is about 1.37% of the GDP, and we are currently en route to 1.76 by 2030. And Trudeau has vowed that we will hit the 2% by 2032. I think it's absolutely hilarious that Trudeau thinks he is going to be in power to 2032. That would be quite the run as a prime minister if he is, for some reason or somehow, still in power by the time 2032 hits. But yes, as we are being told by a U.S. senator here, people in Canada certainly have to understand the threat that comes to us from the north. They come after us. They are going to come after you, aka Canada, from the north, and we're next after that. At the end of the day, Justin Trudeau is going to be gone by next year. This will fall into the hands of Pierre Poilievre, and like I said, the fact that Trudeau, he says he vows at July's NATO summit that Canada's spending will hit the 2% by 2032. I think it's funny that he believes he'll still be in some sort of power by then. But getting further into this, Canada failing to meet their commitment to NATO by not hitting the spending target. Let's take a listen here, shall we?
With me now for an exclusive Canadian broadcast interview is Chairman of the U.S. House Intelligence Committee, Ohio Republican Congressman Mike Turner. Congressman Turner, pleasure to meet you and welcome you to our program. Thanks for making the time.
Vashi, thanks for having me.
Last month, you wrote an op-ed in Newsweek, the headline of which certainly garnered a lot of reaction here in Canada. Trudeau, you wrote, not Trump, is the greatest threat to NATO. Why do you believe that?
Well, I think, you really couched it in terms of, the issue here is that when NATO came together at the Wales summit and agreed that all countries would aspire and reach a 2% commitment of defense spending, it was an agreement. It wasn't a policy debate. It wasn't something for them to go back to and decide later whether or not they would do. It was an agreement. And the countries that have failed to do so have not reached really their obligation to the other countries in the alliance. Today, as we look to what the threats are to other countries, every country who's not reached that is really failing in their commitment to the others. Now, the United States and Canada have strong relations. I'm here very proud to be in Montreal as part of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly meeting here in Montreal. It's exciting that Canada is hosting this meeting. But at this meeting, one of the biggest discussions will be those countries who are failing to live up to that Wales commitment of 2%.
And what, in your view, is the consequence for those allies who aren't in the structure, within the structure of the alliance? Like, will anything happen? For example, beyond, I know what you're going to talk about, the actual threats that exist, but like, is there any tangible consequence within NATO if you don't live up to that pledge?
Well, currently there is not, and that's really the sad part is that those countries who see no consequences have just decided not to live up to it. Right now with Russia's aggression in Europe, Vladimir Putin has openly made statements threatening England. He has openly made statements threatening London. Tomorrow, if he decides to attack England or London, Canada is not able to rise to its obligations in NATO to help defend England.
So this has been a significant issue in this country for a number of years. And over the nearly decade-long lifespan of the government, I've asked a variety of defense ministers, why we haven't, until this July at least, laid out a plan to get there. And often their response has been to call the target arbitrary and to point to things that they feel are not taken into account. So, for example, the role that we play in leading the NATO mission in Latvia, the training and the resources that are involved in something like that. How would you respond to that?
Well, every country has additional items that they do. Certainly the United States does, Germany does. But I think here for Canadians, they should look just to their own performance of their military. The Canadian military has in so many areas, not just in the 2%, in areas where it's just not performing. And the fact that, the Canadian military was going to be fielding F-35s and that mission continues to be put off means that there are careers of potential, Canadian pilots that will never have flown F-35s, where you have Norway, a country much smaller with much less resources, that will have had pilots that reach the capabilities of being F-35 pilots, and that can go on in the future to contribute their expertise of having achieved that level of expertise. I think there's just greatness that Canada can achieve that is just being put off, that is not accomplished when you don't achieve what is that agreed upon level of 2% spending.
We spoke a moment ago about the lack of consequence within sort of the structure of the alliance, but the incoming president has, at multiple different instances, talked about the consequences, in his view, of allies who do not meet that target. In fact, at one moment during the campaign, even said that, if allies don't, that Russia should do or could do whatever the hell, I think that was part of my language, the hell they want to those allies. Do you think that the incoming president is serious about that? And B, what would you expect the consequences vis-a-vis President Trump to be for an ally like Canada who is not meeting the target?
I think his comments are clearly rhetorical, and what you're seeing him saying is this 2% is important. It really does have consequences, and it has consequences across the alliance. And what he's showing really is that it's not just theoretical. Every day that someone in the alliance does not reach that 2%, it has direct consequences to our ability as an alliance to defend ourselves against authoritarianism, to the threats that we have to democracies. And so there is a risk, and that risk is borne across the entire alliance by everyone when someone fails to reach that 2%, as you recognized, which was agreed upon.
Do you think there will be, I guess, more specific consequences for Canada? You'll know, as a congressman representing Ohio, how important the trading relationship between our two countries is to both of us, but in particular because of the relative size of our economies to Canada. The prospect of tariffs, the prospect of renegotiating NAFTA in 2026 all lay on the table before us. Do you think there is a world in which the incoming president ties our level of defense spending directly to the prospects of free trade with your country?
I do believe that as NATO takes up this issue of countries that are not meeting their agreed upon 2%, there will be some difficulty in the future, in part because I do think that 2% number is going to be increased. I think that as you look to Russia, as you look to the threat of China, as you look to what authoritarian countries are doing, the fact that North Korea, Iran, China, and Russia are coordinating, collaborating, that number is likely going to go up. So as part of it, the number increasing and the gap being wider, there's probably going to be a greater discussion as to what is that going to mean for those countries that are not meeting the requirements. And in that, it's probably going to be a very difficult discussion for those countries who are failing.
So, look, Canada really desperately needs to hit the 2%. And this was 7 years ago, back when Trump was in office. He had gone to, obviously, the NATO summit, wherever this was taking place. And he was saying the same thing. Donald Trump tells NATO allies to pay up.
I have been very, very direct with Secretary Stoltenberg and members of the alliance.
And you'll see Trudeau in the crowd.
NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations. But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense. This is not fair to the people and taxpayers of the United States. And many of these nations owe massive amounts of money from past years and not paying in those past years. Over the last 8 years, the United States...
Look, there he is right there. So this was 7 years ago. Trump was going hard on people back then in his first term. What do you think he's going to do in his second term? He's going to not just double down, he's going to quadruple down on Canada, forcing us to probably go beyond that 2% mark, because we have failed to reach it for a decade now.
Congressman, you've also written that 2032, the date by which, or the year by which this government has articulated they would meet that target, is too far off. What would not be too far off in your view?
Well, I mean, the Wales commitment has been for a very long time. You're already past due. So I think that the problem is that it's not just really this 2% number that was agreed to in Wales. It really is just the functioning capabilities of the overall military. I think even if you look at other metrics, the Canadian military needs desperate investment right now to be able to have both its military equipment, its personnel, its training. There are so many different areas of immediate investment that need to occur that the 2% really will be easy to accomplish if you just begin to address the areas in which there's immediate needs for investment.
And just one final question on the nature of that threat, as you have referenced. You were, in your capacity as chair of the committee that you do chair, one of the first people to sound an alarm over Russia's space-based nuclear threat. This week, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, lowered the threshold for the nuclear doctrine. And I wanted to know, based on your knowledge, your expertise, your experience, how you interpret that.
Well, I think the threat that we're facing from Russia is real. The aggression that we're seeing in Ukraine is not isolated to Ukraine. What Vladimir Putin is doing is setting his sights on the broader aspect of what he has identified as rebuilding the Warsaw Pact, which is a number of countries that are currently in NATO and are strong and thriving democracies, including countries that have been incorporated into the EU. Only by our having strong alliances in the West being committed to fighting authoritarianism and supporting democracies are we going to be able to sustain this, as Russia is garnering the support of China, working both to tie North Korea and Iran and their weapons productions to his military aggression. This really is a very difficult time that we're facing over the next 2 to 5 years, and it's going to take every nation, including Canada, to come to the recognition that we are facing a unified front from our authoritarian adversaries, and it is going to take strong work from our allies to make certain that we retain a very unified front.
Okay, anyway, you get the point with what he's saying. Look, they were losing patience back in the first term, and they have lost all patience in the second term. Trump allies lose patience with Canada's promises on NATO spending. It's only going to get worse from here if Trudeau does not pull through. As a matter of fact, Trudeau tells NATO allies Canada is on track to meet 2% spending. 2% spending in 2032. Trudeau still thinks he's going to be in office and in power in 2032. We have a funny little video here. Shocking but not surprising.
Okay, hey everyone, Michelle Frary, Member of Parliament, Peterborough Kawartha, just outside committee. We've just sort of taken a outside here. We're just in this tiny little area, and some breaking and shocking news of what just happened in committee. We had Justice Minister Arif Virani testify, and you know what? It's shocking, but it's not surprising what this guy does. It's everybody else's fault. It's the province's fault. I brought up the case in my local riding of Selena Taylor, who was murdered by a man who was out on repeat bail offenses, and he went on to say, oh, but it's the province's fault. So I have Jamil Javani here with me. Jamil, yes. You had quite an exchange with the minister today in the House, and
I did.
He actually called you a jackass, which I don't know if the Hansard caught it, but you really called him out on what he's been doing.
Yeah, he gets emotional when you tell the truth, and the truth is that this guy is delusional. He stood in the House of Commons today and said that they had delivered bail reform, and anybody watching this all across our wonderful country knows the Liberals have not delivered bail reform. In fact, bail continues to be one of the leading causes of crime and chaos in communities across Canada. These guys aren't here to tell the truth. They're here to live in an alternate reality, very different from the rest of Canada. And when you point out that they're living in a delusional place, they get frustrated and they just continue to just run their mouths and mislead people. And the good thing is that Canadians know they're not telling the truth. Exactly. And our colleague here, Mr. Brock, can explain exactly what the federal decision was years ago that have actually made it very difficult for other levels of government to properly enforce the law in our country.
Okay, so Larry Brock, Teiko Van Popto, you guys have been lawyer, me. This is Justice Committee, welcome. But Larry, what is he leaving out? Because this is what drives me crazy, and Teiko, you must see this all the time. It's everybody else's fault. Oh, I didn't get the email. Oh, I didn't get the phone call. Oh. Yeah. So what do you have here, Larry?
Well, I agree with you. He's taking a victory lap in the House and in this committee as well, claiming that the only bill that he's introduced as minister, Bill C-48, was somehow a success. Bill C-48 simply introduced reverse onus provisions. Still, people are getting released on bail. People who have numerous charges are still being released. Why are they being released? They are being released because of Bill 75, which was introduced in 2018. Now, I want to read out various sections of this because I'm sick and tired of our chief legal officer casting no aspersion against his department and himself, blaming provinces, blaming provincial court judges and justices of the peace for not keeping communities safe. He is not keeping communities safe because he's done nothing with respect to 493.1 of the criminal code. This is what's handicapping our judges and our justice of the peace in releasing those serial violent offenders. It says, in making a decision, a peace officer, a judge, or a justice shall, which is mandatory language, shall give primary consideration to the release of the accused at the earliest reasonable opportunity and on the least onerous conditions that are appropriate in the circumstances. What that means, folks, is it doesn't matter about the offender's background. It doesn't matter what the nature of the offense is. It doesn't matter what the criminal record is. They must consider early release for those offenders, regardless of circumstances and on the least onerous conditions. That is solely within this federal minister's jurisdiction. He's doing nothing about it because he's weak. The whole government has been weak on bail, and a conservative government is immediately going to repeal Bill 75 to keep our communities safe.
Thank you.
And there you have it. So basically, they got into this massive argument. The committee meeting exploded. And I find it kind of funny. All the conservative MPs were sent into this tiny room all together. Took the time to record this video, I guess, behind the scenes. The last thing I want to cover, Pierre Poilievre spoke with reporters on Donald Trump's tariff threat.
Thank you very much for coming, everyone. Now in English. The United States is the greatest economic and military superpower in the history of the world, and they are our neighbor. The U.S. is responsible for $1.2 trillion of our trade. We trade almost twice as much with the Americans as we trade with the rest of the world combined. Trade with the U.S. is 40% of our economy. President Trump yesterday made an unjustified threat of a 25% tariff on our already weak and shrinking economy. Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland were surprised, amazingly. Everyone else knew something like this could be coming because President Trump had been talking about it for years on the campaign trail. Yet 20 days ago, Chrystia Freeland said, "Don't worry, Canada will be fine." Apparently, neither she nor Justin Trudeau were following what the incoming president was saying. And now we must take account and we must be honest with our unprecedented weakness. After 9 years of Prime Minister Trudeau, our GDP is smaller than it was when he took off, per capita is smaller than it was when he took office. In fact, our per capita GDP has dropped more than any other G7 country since the year before COVID. We have the most indebted households. We've had the worst housing inflation. A quarter of our people are in poverty. 2 million people line up in food banks. Food prices have risen 37% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. Our economy is teetering on the brink of collapse. And now we face this renewed threat. We need a plan to put Canada first on the economy and on security. So, to start with, on the economy, I'm calling on Prime Minister Trudeau to put partisanship aside and, in the spirit of Team Canada, to accept that he cannot go ahead with quadrupling the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. This was an irresponsible policy to begin with, but combining this kind of crippling energy tax increase with potential tariffs from Donald Trump would push our economy into a nightmare and a tailspin. So let's put partisanship aside and axe the tax. Second, the Prime Minister has to put aside partisanship and, in the spirit of Team Canada, cancel his energy cap, which would see Alberta and Saskatchewan produce 35% less energy at a time when we need those jobs. It is our biggest industry and our biggest export. The incoming American president says he wants to cut gas prices in half. Well, the only way to do it will be to import more clean Canadian energy, so the Prime Minister has to stop this assault on our biggest industry. Next, he has to cancel all tax increases on work, investment, and making stuff in Canada. Finally, he needs to renew and restart the commitment to end the softwood lumber tariffs and the Buy America policies, just like Stephen Harper was successful in doing, even though Justin Trudeau has not been able to do that under 3 presidents and 9 years. On security. About a week ago, Justin Trudeau admitted that he broke our immigration system, and that brings new challenges. His own published documents show there are 4.9 million people here temporarily that are supposed to leave by December 31st of next year, 13 months from now. 4.9 million people. We asked what the plan was to track their departures, and yesterday his immigration minister said, we're just going to take people at their word. He admits that there have been 2 ISIS terrorists allowed into our country. What is the plan to protect our security and reinstate sovereignty over who is in our country? Military. Justin Trudeau has demolished our military with poor decisions, botched procurements, and wasted money. One thing he could do today is announce that his planned billion-dollar cut to the military is cancelled, and then present a real plan to reallocate money away from lower priorities towards rebuilding our military and reinforcing our military security over North America. And finally, on drugs. I don't want to stop drug overdoses to please Donald Trump. I want to stop drug overdoses so that there's not one more mother with her face buried in a pillow sobbing that she just lost her kid after 47,000 other Canadians have died. That's more than we lost in the Second World War. A 200% annual increase in drug overdose deaths have resulted from Justin Trudeau's radical liberalization of drugs. Justin Trudeau must put partisanship aside, not just for the sake of Team Canada, but for the sake of our people, and fully reverse his liberalization of drugs. Ban them, prosecute those who traffic in them, secure our borders against the illegal importation of fentanyl ingredients, put people in treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free. That is necessary now more than ever. Look, President Trump has the right to put his workers and his nation's security first. I will put Canada's workers and Canada's security first. We need a Prime Minister with the strength and the smarts, the brains and the backbone to stand up for this country, to rebuild our security, our military, and our economy. That is what I will do. Let's bring it home.
Should Canada have less reliance on American trade, in your view?
That's a nice idea. It's a very nice idea. We live next door to the biggest economic and military superpower in the history of the world. We can fantasize about other trade partners, but I'm interested in reality. We've been fantasizing for the last 9 years, and look where it has got us. What we actually need to do is stand up for our economy by axing taxes, unleashing free enterprise, having a massive boom in our energy and resource production, and standing up for our country against unfair tariffs abroad.
Aside from all the measures that we laid out, would you be willing to retaliate?
If necessary.
Est-ce que le Canada devrait imposer des tarifs sur les États-Unis?
Si nécessaire.
You're asking the Prime Minister to put aside his partisanship. Will you put aside yours and join the government in a Team Canada approach?
I'm making nonpartisan suggestions today. But let me be clear. We don't need is a spectacle of a bunch of politicians sitting around tables, meeting, and holding photo ops. I know that would be a wonderful spectacle for all of you. You would all enjoy that kind of interpersonal theatrics. But what we really need is an action plan with tangibles. So bottom line, Trudeau's got to axe the carbon tax. He's got to lift the production cap on Canadian energy. He's got to rebuild our military and secure our borders. That is a real plan to protect our economy and our security and put Canada first, and that's more important than photo ops and meetings between politicians.
What do you think about the idea of Canada striking a separate bilateral agreement with the U.S., separate from Mexico? Do you endorse that idea?
Canada first. Let's put it this way. One, I only care about Canada. I want to put our country first. Two, America is responsible for over 60% of our trade. We trade more with the U.S. than we do with the rest of the world combined. I will do what is necessary to preserve and protect that relationship above all others.
$250 checks. Has your party decided if you support them? And can you also respond to the demands from the Bloc and NDP to expand it even further?
So, first of all, we will make our final decision and formalize it tomorrow at our caucus meeting, as always. But with our GDP collapsing, with $500 billion pouring out of our country, and with Canadians lined up at food banks, our priority is not to save you 10 cents on a bag of potato chips, right before quadrupling the carbon tax on your heat, housing, gas, and groceries. What we need is a real common sense plan to slash bureaucracy and waste in order to bring down taxes, inflation, and interest rates. And we will answer. We also know that on the checks, Justin Trudeau has said, when he was asked about checks not long ago, he said, if you give out checks, you drive up inflation by exactly the same amount. If you have an economy with 10 apples and $10, it's $1 an apple. If you double the number of dollars in the economy to 20 and you still only have 10 apples, well, now it's $2 an apple. You're not actually increasing purchasing power by printing money, borrowing cash, and sending out checks. What that has done after 9 years of Trudeau has given us the worst inflation in 40 years, the worst housing price inflation in the G7. We have people living in poverty. They can't find homes. We need a real common sense plan to permanently axe the carbon tax, axe the sales tax on new homes, so that Canadians can earn a powerful paycheck that buys affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods. Nous avons besoin d'un vrai plan pour couper les taxes et impôts et permettre les gens de gagner des plus grands chèques de paie et pensions qui achètent de nourriture et de logements dans les communautés sécuritaires.
And there you have it from Pierre Poilievre. And Doug Ford has also come out saying that Canada would have no choice but to retaliate against Donald Trump's 25% tariff. Just a reminder to the American people, yes, it will hurt Canada. Yes, it will hurt Ontario, but it will hurt Americans. It will hurt their economy, Ford told reporters at Queen's Park on Tuesday.
We need a plan for our security, safety, and our economy. A Canada First plan. But for months now, Mr. Trump has been threatening tariffs. Here we are today without a plan. The big plan is a Zoom call, Mr. Speaker. There's no plan to reverse the liberalization of drugs that has gotten Americans so worried. There's a lot of chaos that our Prime Minister has caused at the borders. There's no plan to cut the taxes that are harming our economy during these uncertain times. Where is the Canada First plan? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I had a good call with Donald Trump last night. I underscored that we've been working together for decades to create prosperity on both sides of the border. We must work together. That is how we can meet challenges together and create prosperity for all. We will always defend Canadian jobs, Canadian workers, and Americans too. We will do this in a nonpartisan way. We will work as a team. That's what works in teamwork, nonpartisanship. I've spoken with the Premiers Ford and Legault. We will all continue to work together to defend Canada. The Right Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Right, but apparently the call didn't work because just a few minutes later, President Trump threatened Canada with tariffs. The same goes for softwood lumber and Buy America. For 9 years now, our Prime Minister has not gotten any gains for Canada. And now he's admitted that he broke our immigration system. There are 700 foreign students who need to leave Canada within a year. They can illegally cross south into the United States, which would be a huge issue. What is the Prime Minister's plan to fix the immigration system that he broke? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, there are international students who come from everywhere in the world to study in Canada. They're in Canada during their studies. At the end of their studies, they return to their countries of origin. That is what happens in the majority of cases, an overwhelming majority of cases. And we do have a system for when people do not return to their countries. Our immigration system does help us address current challenges. We have reduced immigration to Canada recently in order to give our economy a chance to catch up. That's part of an immigration system that works and that...
You implemented an immigration system that has destroyed the country for the past decade.
For economy and security that puts Canada first. But despite the fact the Prime Minister has known for years that Trump was threatening these tariffs, and for 3 weeks that President Trump had won the election, the only plan he has is a Zoom call. No plan to reverse his disastrous liberalization of drugs that have killed people and now threaten our borders. No plan to fix the broken borders that he caused. No plan to cancel the tax increases that will drive billions and many jobs away. Where's the plan to put Canada first?
Canada is full. We can't accept anybody. We can barely house the people here as it is.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Instead of panicking and falling back on slogans like the Leader of the Opposition, we rolled up our sleeves and we're getting to work. We're working with all the premiers, pulling together in a Team Canada approach, because that's how we defend Canadian jobs from coast to coast to coast. I spoke with Donald Trump yesterday evening, talked about how important it was for us to work together to solve some of the challenges we're facing as a continent, as countries, but also work to grow our economy, protect our workers on both sides of the border. This is the responsible, methodical approach we're taking as we move forward, while our opponent falls back on slogans and fear.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He spoke with the incoming president, and moments later, Mr. Trump put out a tweet slapping a 25% tariff on Canada. So that worked about as well as the Prime Minister's efforts on Buy America and softwood lumber, which continue to be penalized, even though the previous Conservative government got both of those things lifted. Now move over to drugs. The Prime Minister's disastrous legalization and liberalization of drugs has the Americans worried, in addition to costing 47,000 deaths in Canada. Where's the plan to stop the drugs and keep our border open to trade?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the Leader of the Opposition is just making stuff up. I clearly spoke with the President of the United States an hour and a half after he put out his suggestion on tariffs. The reality is we're going to continue to work constructively with the incoming administration to protect Canadian jobs, to protect Canadian growth, to take the responsible approach that isn't steeped in partisanship, that pulls together the Team Canada approach that stands up for Canadians instead of throwing our arms up and saying all is broken like the Leader of the Opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, that's even worse. The statement went out promising tariffs before they even got a chance to speak. It's kind of like him backing down on Buy America and backing down on softwood lumber, Mr. Speaker. Now let's move to the tariffs the Prime Minister wants to impose on our economy. Quadrupling the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre would cripple our economy. New tax increases on work and energy would do likewise, sending hundreds of billions of dollars south of the border. Now that Canadians are facing this economic crisis, will he at least cancel his plan to hike taxes so we can save jobs?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we see once again the Leader of the Opposition flailing and inventing stuff to try and fit his preferred attacks into his priorities. The reality is we're going to continue to work constructively with the incoming administration to do what Canada and the U.S. have always done, create prosperity together, protect jobs on both sides of the border as we grow the economy. When it comes to drugs, Mr. Speaker, we've taken serious steps on that and we'll continue to. But if the Leader of the Opposition is suggesting he wants to recriminalize marijuana, let him just say that.
That's right.
What? Order! Recriminalize marijuana? What? It's talking about the hardcore drugs that are on the street. Honestly, I'd decriminalize his marijuana again, whatever. Oh, fuck.
Order!
It's honestly the least of our problems right now, to be honest with you.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, over the past few days and hours, we have received signals that we are about to go through some significant insecurity, and we will experience that in Parliament too. There's protectionism, there is rather strong diatribe, strong choice of words. Now is the time to unite people, to make people feel safe, especially economically. We should support the most fragile and the most vulnerable in our society. The Prime Minister, is he willing to reconsider his rebate plan so that seniors can feel that they are economically and financially secure? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are struggling to make ends meet. We're aware of that. That's why we're offering a tax break to everyone for the next few months on groceries, on clothing for children, on all sorts of items that Canadians buy regularly. We're also looking into ways to acknowledge that workers in this country have carried a heavy burden the past few years. They have protected our economy. We want to protect the economy. We want to protect them and their loved ones. We want to acknowledge the hard work of hardworking Canadians. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, before today's workers, other workers came before them. Workers who worked all their lives, who paid taxes all their lives, and who have no other option. The government is giving checks to people who don't need them, and the government is not giving checks to those who need them the most. Would the Prime Minister agree to decrease the salary and give the extra money to those who need it and to seniors? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, all Canadians are struggling in different ways. That's why we're investing in creating more daycare spaces. We're also investing through the Canada Child Benefit, which is increasing every year. We're also trying to help seniors. We're helping the seniors through dental care. We're helping seniors by increasing the guaranteed income supplement. We did so by 10%. And we also increased the OAS for those over 75. We want to help all Canadians, especially hardworking ones who are also struggling, and that's why we will be going ahead with this initiative.
Donald Trump's threats of tariffs
could threaten
hundreds of thousands of Canadian mortgage-paying jobs. The only thing a bully responds to is strength. So where is our plan to fight back? Where is the war room?
Where's your pension?
Where is a concrete plan to bring our issue before CUSMA? Why isn't the Prime Minister fighting like hell for Canadian jobs?
Hear, 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 hear.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, rather than panicking, we're engaging in constructive ways to protect Canadian jobs like we have before. I don't think the idea of going to war with the United States is what anyone wants. What we will do is stand up for Canadian jobs as we have before, as we will continue to. Stand up for the prosperity we create when we work together. Stand up for the challenges that we're facing, that we're protecting Canadians from. There is work we can do together. That is the work we will do, seriously, methodically, but without freaking out the way the leader of the NDP seems to be.
L'honorable député de Burnaby.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Forward, if the government ignores this problem, they need to take it seriously. They can't afford another letdown. Les attaques de Trump n'étaient pas une surprise.
Trump's attacks did not come as a surprise. We saw the writing on the wall. But the Prime Minister prefers to turn a blind eye, and he's been saying that everything is going fine. Meanwhile, thousands of Canadian jobs are at risk. Why hasn't he done anything about Donald Trump's threats? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we take our economy and defending it seriously. That means we can't take action out of panic. We need to defend the principles that will help us thrive. In North America, we all succeed when we work together. We will work with the American administration to address the challenges that both of our countries are faced with. We will work together to create prosperity for our workers and to defend our workers. That's what we've always done. That's what we will continue to do. Mr. Speaker, this is not time to panic. This is time to work hard, and that's exactly what we're doing.
I like how Jagmeet thinks he's so confident. I would love to see him debate Trump in international deals.
The first time he went head-to-head with Trump, the Prime Minister was forced into accepting humiliating concessions on agriculture, steel tariffs, and on Buy American. And that was when Canada had a stronger position thanks to a decade of low-tax, pro-job, conservative policies. After 9 years of economic vandalism, though, he's put Canada in an extremely vulnerable position. Per capita GDP is now lower than 9 years ago. Canada has the most indebted household amongst our trading partners. We have the worst housing inflation, and food prices have risen 37% here, faster here than in the US. Now that he's negotiating a position of weakness, why should Canadians expect anything?
No, I don't want Jagmeet as Prime Minister. I just want to see him debate Trump or have some sort of debate with Trump on international deals.